Hey everyone, so I'm back with another chapter and I'll be going through graphs and transformation for EMath, AMath and the JC Math. Now, it's going to be a fairly simple chapter, but it can get tricky. So if I teach you the techniques right, you would be able to get it, alright? So without further ado, let's just begin. And basically in the Singapore syllabus, you're mainly dealing with two variables when it comes to graph sketching. Alright, and the most common variables that you see are x and y. And well, because this is a specific case, it's also called the Cartesian equation. So these are Cartesian coordinates or Cartesian equation where you're dealing with x and y. Alright, so when we have an x and y Cartesian axis or Cartesian plane, basically we are now trying to sketch the relationship between x and y. And this relationship would be given by an equation that equates both x and y, usually with a function of a function of y in terms of x. So we have y equals to function of x, and that's the equation that they usually want us to graph. All right. So it's gonna be quite simple. I'm going to go through how we should start sketching a graph. All right. So first, draw two straight lines. I mean, I don't have a ruler now, so make do. So we draw by drawing these two arrows. These arrows are called the axes. All right. So when you talk about graph, we're always talking about the axis, which is important, right? Because this gives us an indication of what variables are being plotted, or what graph is also being plotted as well. So draw the axis, and if I do it, let's say y equals to fx, then we know that x is the horizontal and y is the vertical. Why so? Very simple. X, if you notice, is the independent variable, and y is the dependent variable. Because if you look at the equation, you know that you can put any value of x, and y would then follow suit, right? So if x, let's say, is 5, then y will be some value that depends on what you put inside for x. Okay, that's why x is the independent variable, y is the dependent variable, and the independent variable is usually the horizontal axis, and the dependent variable is the vertical axis. But if you can't remember, very simple. So we have vertical. First letter is v. So we have v, we add a vertical line, gives you y. And let's say if you have the horizontal axis, it would then be the opposite. So it's just simply x, all right? No cheat for x, but a very lame cheat for the y-axis, the vertical axis. Then we also need to label the origin. So you can do it at the top right or the bottom left. Usually you see it at the bottom left. This origin means that every variable is at 0. Right? So origin, every variable is 0. So this is very important. Now, because this allows us to plot where the numbers are for the graph. So in a sense that if the origin is at this point of intersection down here, then because x is going in the right direction, the right side, then we know that these values here are positive for x, and these values on the left are negative for x. Same thing for y. The arrow is pointing upwards, and because the origin is right here, any value below the origin is negative for y, and any value above the origin for y are positive. All right, so this is the idea of graph sketching. I'll go into more details when actual values are being used. Now the second part, after drawing our axis, is to plot the graph. All right, so let's say you plot the graph already. The thing you need to do next is to label the point of intersection. All right, so how do you label the points of intersection? Is very simple. Let's say I have a linear graph, which I will go through in more details again, and the point of intersection is between the graph and the axis. All right, either axis, so it's either the x or the y axis if there exists a point of intersection. So in this case, the graph intersects down here. So here would be, well, x is some positive value, let's say a, and y is simply is 0, right? Because it's down here. So we need to label it as bracket a comma 0. And by doing a comma 0, this is called your coordinates. Essentially, point on the graph that would fit the line. All right, so the line basically plots a bunch of coordinates that satisfy the equation y equals to fx. So if let's say the coordinates are a0 on the graph, it means that at x equals to a, y equals to 0. So for the coordinates, it's very simple. This is basically your value of x, and this is basically the value of y. All right, so that's why we read coordinates. So that is your x-intercept. And then for the y-intercept, we know that x equals to 0. Y is, let's say, for some value b. That's why now we have x equals 0, comma b. All right, so label the points of intersection. Another thing to label are actually your turning points. All right, so of course in a linear graph, there are no turning points, so there's no need to label them. But again, label their coordinates as well. And for the fourth one, well, actually, for the H2 and H1 math students, you should actually do this as your second step, asymptotes. All right, label the equation, because these asymptotes will help you to sketch the graph efficiently and give you a general sense of how a graph should look like between, let's say, a certain domain or between a certain x interval. All right, so these are basically the 4 main steps of a graph, and this is basically the introduction of graphs and transformation for the 4 maths, although transformation is only talked about in the H2 math syllabus. All right, so enjoy your graphing journey, and I'll catch you guys again.